Hey, 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 good afternoon, everybody. Let me know if you can hear me okay. If you can hear my audio, just let me know you can hear my audio. Just type in the chat, we can hear you. Hey, Prince, it's so good to see you. All right, we can hear you. We can hear you. Thumbs up. I can hear you. All right, good, good, good. We're going to be getting started here in just a moment. Super excited to have y'all with us today. If you hear music in the background, let me know. All right, we're going to be getting started here in just a moment. All right, all right, all right. As those that are coming in, we'll be letting folks in. Nevertheless, we are going to get started. I am super, super excited about the webinar today. So listen, these are always high energy. I have lots of energy when it comes to talking about workforce management, operations, employee experience, customer experience, building people. I think that that's so important that we build people in a world where we're talking a lot about we talk a lot about the technology and those trends and things of that nature. I think it's super important that we begin to talk about how do we build people to build these organizations? How do we set individuals up for success? So I am super, super excited about the webinar today. I have some guests that are going to be speaking after. You already know how we do, guys. If you don't know, I'm going to be telling you how we do here in a second. And so I'm super excited for you to hop in and dive in on all the things that we have in store for you all today. But before I do, let me get some housekeeping out the way. If you can hear me, because I get super excited and I just go to talking and all the different things. If you can hear me okay, let me know that you can hear me. Also, one of the things that I want to make sure that I do is I also want to make sure that you let me know. Okay, let me know in scan this QR code. So you'll see this QR code a couple of times, right? Because I love webinars that are super engaging. This is not just no more dry eyes type of webinar, right? I'm dating myself when I say that, right? Some of y'all remember that commercial, but this is not that. Okay, this is not me just sitting here lecturing. This is really meant to be engaging and meant to inspire, right? So what you'll see when you scan that QR code, I want you to scan that QR code and let me know where you're joining from, okay? So that's how we'll be engaging. I'll be asking some questions as well, doing some polls, and you'll be scanning the code and letting me know the different answers. So I can see a couple of answers about to start popping through. It's telling me up above. Okay, we got Indiana in the house. I know last month. Oh, New York City. Okay, all right. New York City's in the house. Where are y'all joining from? Where are you joining from? All right. Also, if there is something that I say during the webinar or you hear a guest that says something, again, this is not just lecture. At the end, we do roundtable and we also do a interview. And so I want to make sure that your questions are being answered. I tell people this all the time. They think that I am lying, but I tell them I am telling them the truth. I am an introvert. So doing this type of content is a lot for me. However, I am only doing this content because people have asked me for it, right? You have asked me, hey, can you tell me about building a workforce program from the ground up? Can you tell me this and all of the different things? So I'm doing this content because you've asked for it. That is the only reason I'm here. I'm saying that because if there's something that you want to talk about, right, on the next webinar, make sure you leave me a comment in the chat. I'm always looking at the chat. Okay, we see you, Harrisburg, Connecticut in the house, Philly's in the house. Okay, we see y'all. All right, so y'all know how it goes now, right? So you already know How it goes, you'll see me go between deck and you'll see me go between what I'm using here is called Slido, right? So it's a way for us to engage if you don't want to type in the chat or you don't want to come off mute. But I encourage you, come off mute. There are going to be some questions that I ask that I want to hear your feedback on and some challenges that you may be struggling with that I want to talk through, okay? So very first thing that I want to make sure that we do, set the agenda. What are we talking about today? Today, we're talking about accelerating your WFM impact, right? How do you accelerate that WFM impact? So many times I hear from individuals about, hey, I feel like I'm stuck in this role. I feel like, I'm not really going anywhere, or there is a big kind of tension between workforce management and the operations team, right? We feel like the big brother of the center, and we really want to accelerate, or we want to be impactful in what we're doing. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. How do we build a workforce management program? And how do we build a healthy culture inside of organizations where that workforce management program is not only efficient, but helps to maintain culture as well? Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about. And that is a journey. The reason these webinar series are called, it's levels to this is because it actually really is. It is levels to building a very successful workforce management program that has a relationship with operations, has a relationship and have built good rapport with your IT departments and all of the different stakeholders, if you will, inside of the organization. That is a journey. And so you want to be very strategic when you are doing that. And so we're going to be talking about that throughout the webinar. And I want to hear your questions. Again, this is not just lecture. I cannot share. I can't say that enough. This is not just lecture. I want to hear your feedback. Okay. I have some special guests too that I'm super, super excited that they're going to be talking a little bit here when we're getting into this. Okay. So building a WFM program, I want to lay some of the foundation here for building a WFM program. And I see we have some more folks coming in. People are always coming in throughout the presentation. So no worries about that. All right. So building a WFM program, this is what we're going to be talking about first. This is the first thing. So what is the number one mistake that you understand, right? What is the number one mistake you believe that leaders make when building a new WFM program? I want you to scan that QR code and I want you to tell me what you believe that number one mistake is that leaders make. I'm going to give you the answer, what I have seen, but what is that number one mistake that you think, if you had to guess, what would be that number one mistake that you believe that leaders make when they are building a WFM program? What is it? I want to see you type it in the poll there. I want to hear your feedback. I want to see. And then you can also come off mute too if you want to shout it out. Again, this is, we use the Slido deck as well when we have really large audiences and we have some shy people in the audience. But if you want to come off mute, I want you to come off mute and tell me. Rushing to make change. Ooh, that is a good one. That is a good one. I like that. All right. What else? What are some of the other things you think? Understanding utilization. Okay. Number one mistake WFM leaders make. What are some of the other ones? Focus so much on tech versus, oh, yeah, that is good. That is good. Lack future vision. That's really good. That's really good. Okay. Let's hop into it. Let me tell you what I have seen as the number one mistake. I messed something up there. Sorry. Number one mistake that I have seen individuals make when, let's see if I can get back to my presentation. Number one mistake. Okay, let's talk about it. Number one mistake that I see leaders make when building a WFM program, right, is thinking like a WFM leader and not a business leader. Okay, I'm going to explain what I mean by this. What do I mean? Thinking like a WFM leader and not a business leader. When we think like especially, I have to raise my hand because I'm super guilty of this. I used to be. right, of thinking the 4 pillars of workforce management. And most workforce management leaders that are exceptional in this particular field understand what this is. The 4 pillars are building data gathering, right? So data gathering all your data and requirements, all those different things, forecasting, scheduling, and intraday. Okay, these are your pillars of workforce management. Right. So we want to make sure we're gathering data. We want to make sure that we're forecasting. Reason we're gathering data and making sure we're throwing out anomalies or smoothing our data is because we're forecasting. OK, and the reason we're forecasting is so that we can have the right people in the right place. We can make sure the right folks are in the right place. Schedule, have the right folks for our customers. OK, that's so important. And then we're doing real-time management of the business. We're trying to figure out, OK, is the business performing like I thought it was going to perform? Those are your core 4 pillars of workforce management. And so workforce management leaders many times think like this when they're building a WFM program from the ground up. And so that's very tactical. That is very tactical in nature. Instead, I want you to think like a business leader. Okay. If you think like a business leader, then you're going to be thinking about the business more holistically. And there are 4 core things you need to be considering as a business leader that will help you to build a successful workforce management program and to accelerate your impact around workforce management. I'm going to give you those 4. I want you to type them in the chat as I give them to you so I can make sure my audio is good and you're rocking with me. Okay. Those 4 the core 4, that's a tongue twister, right? The core 4 of building business and some business things that you need to understand is first the product or service. I can't tell you how many times I talk to WFM leaders and I talk to operations leaders and I'm like, okay, so tell me more about the product that tell me you work in hospitality. Tell me more about it. Tell me more about what you have going on. And they're like, oh, well, we get calls here and we do this. I'm like, okay, yeah, I know, that's great. Because they're trying to tell me about the tactical thing of what they're doing around forecasting. I'm like, yeah, that's great. But tell me about the product. Tell me about the service that you're providing. And they're lost for words. That is critical that you understand the product and or service of the organization that you're doing workforce management in, or that you're going to build a workforce management program in. Why? Why is that so important? Case in point, think of it like this. Imagine you being in a technical, your tech support for Apple product, right? Right. I call into Apple about my iPhone. I have a Samsung too, so I'm on the fence. I'm lukewarm. I'm sorry. Don't judge me. But anyway, right. So I call in for tech support. My phone's not working. And you are the workforce management company in this tech support organization. If you don't understand, and you came from, let's say you came from a retail based business. So you came from, I don't know, let's call it Wayfair, .com. And so heavy retail type of business, the calls that you got over there were typically about 3 minutes because people was calling about their product, where it was shipped and all the different things. But now you are a workforce management leader that has moved over to a tech service, a technical support type of organization where the product or service is technical support. Well, guess what's going to be a big difference? The type of call handling, right? So in a retail, like say if it was Amazon or Wayfair, the duration of that call might be 2 minutes, 3 minutes. They're just calling for tracking or whatever, something very simple. Versus if I'm calling in or you're talking to my mom about her iPhone, baby, you're going to be on that phone call at least 20 minutes. And that's standard. Okay, that's just a standard regular call. And you need to understand that. So you need to really understand the product and or service of the organization that you're standing up the workforce management program in, or that you are revising or trying to make better impact around workforce management. That is going to be critical because you'll go in doing the same thing that you've always done in other organizations, that you've got results in other organizations. And you're like, well, I don't understand why they can't get the handle time down to 3 minutes. Well, because they're providing technical support. And 20 minutes is standard. right? That is a good time. Okay. So that is why it's super important that you understand the product and or service that your organization is delivering, as well as many other reasons. But that's one of the key reasons that it's important, so that you can understand what type of call or interaction, because it may be email, it may be backup, it may be other types of interactions that your employees are handling from customers. Okay. Second is marketing and sales. You need to understand at a high level what's happening with the marketing and sales inside of your organization. People feel like, or business leaders often feel like, I'll say this, workforce management leaders often feel like, hey, my job is to forecast, schedule, and do intraday. That's my job. But that's not your job. That is the output of your job. Okay. That is the result of you doing your job well. Right. So your job is to make sure that we have the right people in the right place at the right time to serve the need of the customer. Okay. And so if marketing has sent out a campaign and you know nothing about it, and we're expecting X amount of contacts to come in, whether that's phone calls, emails, chats, whatever the case may be, and you know nothing about it in workforce management, how can you ensure that you have the right people in the right place at the right time? And so you need to be dialed in with what's going on from a marketing perspective in your organization. I'm not saying you got to go and create graphics and you got to be all in the CRM tool sending out email blasts. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you need to understand what's happening. Okay. Understanding the same thing. I remember when I worked at a large healthcare company and they would send out these, they had member growth rates, right? And so they were around AEP and OEP season. They would send out these emails. Hey, this is happening. And if workforce management many times didn't know anything about it, we would get flooded with calls and we'd be like, hey, what's going on? And we would listen to a couple calls and we'd figure out, oh, this is what had happened. What had happened was, right? And so you need to understand those types of things, okay? Build relationships with those individuals. You also need to understand from an operations standpoint how the product and or service is delivered. Okay, this is super important. Many times there's a gap between workforce and operations, because operations is very heavily focused on making sure that the employee or the resource is getting the job done. They're getting coached. They have everything that they need to be able to support the customer. Whereas workforce management, typically this team is really worried about efficiencies, making sure schedules are there, all the different things. And so you need to, as a workforce management leader, if you're building a workforce management program or you're trying to accelerate your impact, you need to be working with operations to understand, okay, hey, how is this? How does claims, how do we deliver on claims? What does the process look like? Again, I'm not asking you to be an expert. I'm asking you to understand the process, because as you understand the process of delivery, how we get from claim to customers being paid out, if this is an insurance industry, or if we understand how we get from an order being placed on Amazon to it being shipped out to a person, what are those different hands that it touches? What is the process that occurs? You then are able to understand handle time from a different lens. Okay. So not just the interaction itself where they're calling into customer support, you may be able to say, oh, okay, this is a gap here that if I can solve for this gap or make a recommendation to solve for this gap before it even becomes a interaction, bam, you are accelerating your impact already. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you're understanding what I'm talking about the delivery method. Okay. Many times one of the metrics that we are measuring inside of organizations is first call resolution. Well, what about if you were able to divert traffic in the first place? Right. And that's what we have a lot of this conversation happening around AI right now about is, hey, we want to be able to alleviate some of these interactions, whether it's email, SMS, phone calls, whatever that thing is. And so in order to really bring in a solution or a process that does that, you really need to understand the process, the delivery method. That's super important. Okay. Last but definitely not least. Okay. when we're talking about building a workforce management program, we need to understand the financials. How much does it cost me for this call? How much does it cost me for this employee fully loaded? Right? What do I mean when I say fully loaded? Someone type it in the chat. What does fully loaded mean? When I say, hey, how much does an employee cost me fully loaded? Somebody give me the answer in the chat. Absolutely. 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 So wage, benefits, cost of seat, tech, time, benefits, all the things, right? So when I say fully loaded, that's what we mean. So we're not just talking about their wage. So this is one critical gap that workforce management professionals and operations will make often as well. When we're capacity planning, when we're looking at, okay, how many people do I need to handle this volume or this set of interactions? We're looking at, okay, I need to hire a new hire class and it's going to cost me this. But have you factored in benefits? Have you factored in all the different things, the time it's going to take that person to actually get productive? Because some of y'all be loading these forecasts with what the standard average handle time is, knowing doggone well that this person is not going to be fully productive until 6 weeks after training. So why did we not factor that into the forecast? So we need to understand, yes, speed to competency. I love that, Chris. So that's super important that we understand those elements. So these are some, again, I'm not asking you to be an expert in understand. I'm not asking you to be the product manager at your organization. I'm not asking you to be the CMO at your organization or the CRO, Chief Revenue Officer. I'm not asking you to be the COO, the Chief Operations Officer. I'm not asking you to be the CFO. I'm not asking you to be those roles. What I'm asking you to do is think like a business leader from that perspective. Because if you can do that, I guarantee you this will single-handedly be one of the things that accelerates not only your career, but helps you to build a program, a workforce management program that serves your organization well. Okay. So these are our core 4 that we want to focus on. These are our core 4. Okay. Understanding the product, understanding marketing. So I want you to think about this. I want you to think about in your organization. Okay. I want you to be thinking about your organization now and asking yourself, do I really understand the product or service? Do I understand how we market? Like, what are the channels we market on? What do you mean the channels, Juanita? Like, do we market on social? Do we send out email campaigns? Do we run TV ads? Like, how do customers become an interaction in the contact center, right? Like you need to think about that. Like in the delivery method, how do we deliver our product or service you should be answering these questions. If you can't answer these questions, don't beat yourself up. This is homework for you. Okay. So now building a WFM program from the WFM pillars perspective. So now once we understand the business, right? We understand what our product and service is. We understand marketing and sales, how we market and how we convert that to sales. We understand the operations, the delivery mechanism. We understand the financials. Now we're able to infuse, I'm passionate. I use those kind of words. Infuse, right? Now we're able to infuse the WFM discipline inside of the business because we want to serve the business. That is the goal. If we're not serving the business, then you don't have no job, right? Like at the end of the day, if we just be 100% real, if we're not there to serve the business, then why are we there? So we want to make sure that we're serving the business. And so now we're able to infuse the WFM discipline, the tactical and the strategic things of WFM, the discipline, into our organizational goals and objectives. And so the very first one, you heard me already go through these. Data gathering. We want to gather our data. What do you mean gather your data, Juanita? What are your data sources? Like, are you a voice only center, which means, okay, where does my voice calls come from? Is it 8x8? Is it Ring Central? Is it at 5.9? What phone, what telecom or telephony do you use in your organization? You may be purely back office or digital channels where you're using SMS or email or fax, right? Right. So you may be having some different channels. And so you need to understand the different channels that create interactions within your organization and where that data comes from. That is going to be so important. Okay. Second pillar that makes up the WFM discipline. We're not talking about solutions. This is not a pick you a solution session. Right. I'm not trying to pitch you a technology a session in this call. Right. So we're talking about building a WFM program. Because many of you are building a WFM program from the ground up. You're not even using a WFM solution, so when you register, it asks you, hey, are you using a WFM tool? Many of you aren't even using a WFM tool, and that's okay. You can do WFM, the discipline, just like you can do accounting without QuickBooks. You could put a profit and loss statement together without QuickBooks, right? So you can do WFM, the discipline, without a WFM solution. The point of the WFM solution is to help you scale the processes that you have in place. So you are now in a 500 seat organization. Are you going to be creating schedules one by one for 5,000 people? I think not. Okay. And so you want to leverage a solution to help you scale the process that's in place. Second pillar is forecasting. Okay, so now that we've gathered our data from all our various sources, our CRM tool, because maybe that's where we're doing SMS and chat at, and 5.9 because that's where our voice channel is, and we are using, Twilio for another whatever, right? So you have all these different data sources. This is so important. Many times we're only bringing in voice. We're only gathering voice data. Why? Why are we only gathering voice data when we need to be forecasting on all of the interactions? So that's another conversation for another time. I'll come back to it. Forecasting is our second pillar. We need to understand that there are various types of forecasts. Not only are we forecasting workload and volume, we're forecasting capacity. Okay, so we're forecasting how much volume we expect to get in, workload, and we're also forecasting capacity, how many people we need to serve that workload. That's a common myth that we are only looking for. Typically, when people get solutions and they're standing it up from the ground up, they're like, oh, I just need to know how many people I need. Well, how are you gonna know how many people you need if you don't know how much volume you're going to get? Right. So we have to not only forecast our workload, but we also have to forecast the amount of people or resources rather that we need. OK, so you have various types of forecasts. Then we move into scheduling. So again, remember, I just said this. So many times organizations are like, oh, I'm going to get a WFM tool because I need to, have schedules. Sweetheart, you skipped two whole layers, two whole layers of things that we need to consider, right? Where is the data? What forecast? What are the things? Because how do I know that I'm creating a schedule, not just a schedule that is conducive for what my workforce wants to work, right? So I'll have people come to me and say, oh, okay, my staff is we're open. Our hours of operation is 8 to 5. And I'm like, well, how did you come up with those hours of operations? We commonly call it hoops, right? Like, did we do a schedule analysis? Like, how do we know, like, that's where the volume, like, how do you know that? So you can't just be like, oh yeah, 8 to 5. Those are the schedules that we're going to rock with. Right. No, that's not how that works. OK, so we need to be able to figure out, OK, when is the volume coming in? And which is, again, forecasting at the layers, multiple levels, right? Volume and from a capacity standpoint, so that we can create schedules that are not only good for people. That's so important, because it don't matter how many schedules you have that are good for the business. If you don't have schedules that are good for people, pick somebody else, because they're not going to show up. People ain't going to show up. Okay. So you need to not only have schedules that are good for people, but we need to also balance that with what the business need is as well. Okay. And then last but not least, intraday, which is real-time performance, real-time management. We are looking at, okay, how is the business performing in real time? RTAs are often very slept on. What do I mean by that? Because I know I use a lot of urban talk, okay? Very slept on. I mean, they're highly underestimated. They're highly undervalued. They're underappreciated. But baby, let me tell you, RTAs, you need them. And you need good RTAs. You need good real-time analysts, okay? When you're building out your workforce management program. Why? Because it don't matter how good your plan is. When the day come the day in, when the day come and the volume starts coming in and things are happening, you need people who are boots on the ground, who are observing the environment. They understand what's going on and they can respond. They can respond to what's happening, not react. Absolutely, Chris. You need someone who's going to execute. Right? They're not just responding. I mean, they're not just reacting. There's a difference between reacting and responding. Okay. And so you need people who are going to respond to the business accordingly. And so intraday is super important when we're building out what our processes are. Okay. When this happens, this is the predetermined action and this is what we're going to do. But you have to be observant. You have to be able to catch the trend before the day is gone and I don't have enough hours left in my day or volume left in my day to make it up. One common mistake I see new WFM people make, or even seasoned workforce management people make when it comes to building net new programs inside of organizations is chasing service level. Okay, so they'll chase. What do I mean by chasing service level? It's 5 o'clock. It's 3 o'clock in the day, 3 p.m. in the afternoon. You close at 5. You're going to get 50 more calls for the day. You've tanked service level for the day, and you're trying to make up service level. Sweetheart, the service level is gone. Mathematically, you don't have enough volume left in the day to make up service level. So why are you offering why are you offering overtime? I'll wait. Right? Like that's generally my question. Like, why are we offering overtime? Right? And chasing service level. It's one thing if you're chasing customer experience, like, hey, we just don't want these people to wait. We want to clear out the queue and we want to all the different things. But how do we make sure that we are making sure that we're offering a good customer experience and employee experience and not tanking our budget and chasing service level where you can't even make that up anyway? Your goal is to be at 80%. You're at 69. It's 3 p.m. in the day and you got 50 calls left that you're possibly going to get at max. You're not going to make up service level. It's not enough volume left. Right. So this is important. And intraday people will understand this if they're watching the business and if they are trained, if you have trained them. OK. All right. Also. All right. So building, there is a balance. Right. So when we're building a balance, I'm super excited to hop into this interview coming up here. OK. I have 2 guests that I want to interview and ask some questions to. So I'm super, super excited. So when we're building a balanced WFM program, we are balancing the business goals and objectives around product and service, marketing and sales, the delivery mechanism and the financials with the WFM tactical things that we need to be doing. You can't just be all tactics. If you are all tactics, there will always be a wedge between you and the operations team, you and the IT leader, you and HR, you and whomever the other business leader is. Okay. Other thing I want to make sure that we hop into is getting buy-in for your WFM initiative. So you're like, hey, we need to bring in a workforce management solution, or we need to change these hours of operation. Okay. And so you're trying to get buy-in for your WFM initiative, whatever that thing is. And so you're moving, you're rapidly growing, and you're being pressured to get all these things in place. And you're like, okay, how do I do this? How do I do this? If you're moving from a place of Okay, I want to maintain culture and I want to also bring in efficiency. How do you do that? I want you to scan this code, okay? Or actually, just type it in the chat because something is going on with my Slido and we don't have time. I don't have time to be playing with Slido today. Okay. So just type it in the chat. Okay. Tell me, what's the number one mistake that you think leaders make when it comes to getting buy-in for their WFM initiative? I'm super excited to hear what your thought is. Talking too much and not, Daniel came through with the guns. Yes. Yes, McDaniel. I see you, Chris. That's a good one. Talking too much. You're doing too much talking. Not enough listening. What else? What is another one that you all think is a mistake that leaders make when trying to get buy-in for their WFM initiative? All right. I'm going to tell you here in a second. And assume others understand WFM. Saying it will fix everything. Yeah, not enough explaining of the benefits, not speaking to audience. Yeah. Yes. All right, listen, let's talk about it. Not having the right data provides a holistic view of what agents are doing. Yes. Okay. Number one mistake that I see organizations make or leaders make is they're thinking buy-in and not tie-in. I preach this all the time. We're thinking buy-in. Have you ever bought something that I'm guilty? Oh, I'm so guilty. I hope my husband doesn't see this. Have you ever bought something and it stayed in the box? You never even opened it, right? We be getting these Amazon boxes here to the house and I even forgot what I even bought and it's just sitting in the box. And my husband's like, what's that? I'm like, I actually don't know what that is. Instapot. So, okay, I'm not alone. Have you ever bought something and you never actually used it, or you opened it and used it one time? Right? That's because we as consumers, especially in this Westernistic society, we are very consumer driven, right? So we buy to buy. Like that's just a habit. Like that's like an actual pastime. We go shopping, right? So we buy. And so many times when people are buying things or trying to get buy-in, they'll say, oh yeah, I agree. Yep. That's good. That's right. That's a good thing. Yep. But it doesn't tie into anything that they actually need. See, when you buy something that actually ties into what you need to actually do, you bought the car because you needed to get from point A to point B. You're going to use that car. You best believe you're going to use that car because it tied into your everyday life of going to work, right? It tied into how it served you. When you buy that pot or something that you actually need to use, it ties into your actual life and your life cycle of what you do, you use it. Right? Tell me if I'm wrong, if I'm lying, just say, Juanita, we don't know what you're talking about. We buy stuff all the time that actually ties into our life and we just don't use. Right? Typically, the things that we buy, and again, I'm guilty, that does not tie into my life, my day-to-day life, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get to it. Right? It's even books that we buy, right? Oh, someone mentioned a good book that oh yeah, I'm going to read that book. You buy it, right? And because it wasn't something that you needed in that moment, it didn't tie into what you were trying to learn in that moment. You didn't even read the book, right? It was a good buy. You bought into it because it was something that you were like, oh yeah, I know that I like it. I trust it. So the like, no, trust variable was there, but it didn't tie into how it benefited your day-to-day life. It didn't tie into your everyday use. So one of the number one mistakes that I see leaders make when it comes to getting their WFM initiative bought into is tie-in. So forget buy-in and start thinking tie-in. How do I tie in? Okay, so what are we tying into? How do I tie into the overall company's mission and culture? Right? Like, what is the mission of the organization that I'm working at? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? And how does WFM impact that? How do me making sure we have enough people to serve our customers tie into the mission and culture of the organization? How do I tie into the company's growth goals? This is why it's so important that you understand what they are. Like, are you looking to grow this year? Are you trying to scale this year? How are you looking to scale? Are you looking to scale by leveraging more technology? Are you looking to scale by bringing in new programs? How are you looking to scale, organization? What are your growth goals? Are you looking to grow and just hire more people? What are you, again, and I'm not asking you to be an expert in these things. I'm asking you to be aware of these things because you're expert in workforce management, right? You're a practitioner of workforce management. And so but if you want to accelerate your impact, you want to understand these things. Okay. So we're wanting to tie into the company mission and culture. We want to understand what the growth goals are. We want to understand what the company's department leaders' goals are, right? So when we're thinking about, organization is going to be doing a lot of AI things this year, they're really wanting to, they have this AI budget and they're really, really talking about CX this year. They're really talking heavy about employee experience. How do I tie into that? Okay, you need to be all in IT business. Hey, what y'all got going on? What are the goals? Are you bringing in telephony this year? Are you bringing in workforce management tools this year? What are you bringing in? Why are you doing that? What does that look like? Ask questions. People love to share, right? People love to share and tell you why they're so important, why their role is so important. The problem is you're not asking. Right. And so we need to ask, we need to build those relationships within organizations because workforce management is never linear. It's not just a linear journey. I say this all the time. Workforce management has an obligation, I believe, to be in everybody's business. When I was inside of organizations, HR knew who I was. IT knew who I was. Like all the department marketing knew who Juanita was. And I was in workforce management. I was in everybody's business. Hey, what campaign's going out this quarter? What's the big things that's happening? Because what you're not going to do is catch me by surprise. Okay. So we need to tie into the department leaders' goals. Okay. And so that then helps us to build a healthy culture. We'll skip through this slide. Okay. Yes, I love that. We're the conscience of the business. When I say building a healthy culture, okay, what I'm talking about is perceived control. Okay, because you in a silo are not responsible for the culture of the organization. Okay, company culture is something that is everybody's responsibility. Okay, and so you have a part to play. And so when we talk about perceived control, how do we build healthy culture in an organization? You can actually Google this. This is a scientific study that has been done around perceived control. When people believe they have control, I forget the word I'm looking for. It improves their happiness. When they believe they have control of the situation, when they believe that they have control over an event or a situation, it naturally improves their mood and their outlook of what's happening. And so what we want to do when we're thinking about building healthy cultures is introduce an element of perceived control. I highly recommend, if you have not looked up, if you've never heard about perceived control, you haven't heard about the study, then I highly recommend that you go and Google it, right? It's something that you can Google and look up. But perceived control, I'm going to give you the quick and easy rundown of it, okay? Perceived control is the belief in one's ability, okay, to exert control over a situation or event. So there are three key elements. When we think about perceived control. Okay. And I'm going to tell you what they are now. If you want to implement an element of perceived control in your organization that will help you to build a healthy culture, help you to get your WFM initiatives improved or passed on and acted on, you need these three elements, okay? The first is the ability. An individual needs the ability to do what you're asking them to do, right? So if you're saying, we need a workforce management program, or a workforce management tool, or we need to change these hours, and that's outside of their ability to do, you don't have perceived control, which will limit the culture. It will limit your impact. So you need to be aware of the ability of the individual that is you're trying to implement perceived control with. Okay. Resource. Individual needs the resources as well. So if there is not a resource, you want me to log these calls, but how am I logging? We don't have a CRM tool. Right. You want me to take these calls and be under 3 minutes, but we don't have a knowledge management. We don't have knowledge management where I can't look up the answers. So I got to do a lot of digging and research. I don't have the resources available. You want me to create schedules for 11 million people. It's a number my grandmother made up, and I still don't know what that number is, but 11 million people, and I'm one person. We don't have the resources available to create that many schedules. Right. So resource is very important when we're talking about perceived control. And then last but definitely not least, they need the opportunity. They need the opportunity to act on. This is where that empowerment comes from. They need the ability, resource, and opportunity to act on what it is that you have asked and requested of them. Okay. Because employee experience is more than just a pizza party. Employee experience is about equipping, empowering, and engaging your resources. Equipping, ability. Empowering, resource, and opportunity. Engaging them. Okay? So if you don't have those 3 E's in your employee experience strategy, I highly recommend that you look at it. How are we equipping people? Are they skilled? Do they know how to do the job? Do they have the ability? Okay. Are we making sure that they are empowered? Empowerment is, if you look at the last part of the word, it gives you a hint of what it means, right? So empowerment is about the power to do, the power to act on the skill. It's quite literally the difference between a law enforcement a person and a mall cop. Right? I have the gun, right? But I don't have the actual power to use that. Right? Or a judge and someone who's not a judge, right? You just can't have the skill. You need to also have the empowerment that comes behind the skill. Okay. And then making sure that you are engaging your staff to make sure that, okay, am I setting up coaching calls? Am I engaging the staff so that they have an opportunity to act on what they know? Perceive control. Okay. So I really want to make sure. So we're going to get into roundtable here in a second. I want to hear your questions. We have a smaller group today, so I'm super excited about. I love smaller. We cap the webinars at small groups because we want to get a chance to hear from you, hear what your challenges are, and hear your feedback as well. And so you can also share. Right. We want you to be able to share what are your common best practices when it comes to employee experience, customer experience, workforce management, getting results. So I want to, while we're getting roundtable ready, okay, I want to make sure that if you have a question first, we're going to go to questions first. If you have a question and it's something that you're like, man, I really want to understand this more, I want to understand about this, just raise your hand. Raise your hand. Use the reaction in the chat, and then we'll bring you up. I'll ping you I'll make sure I ping you the link so that you can come up. If there are no questions, then we'll hop right into the round table where we're doing interviews. So I have two guests that I really want to interview around how they are implementing. I was interviewing them earlier this month, and I was like, oh my God, you have to come to the webinar because I think that your insights were just so spot on when it came to how workforce management impacted customer experience as well as workforce management, and employee experience. workforce management directly has an impact on customer experience as well as as well as employee experience. And if you are not impacting that, I'm going to pause. I'm going to say it slow for those that are in the back. Okay. If you are not impacting customer experience and you are not impacting employee experience, you are doing workforce wrong. I know that's a big statement. I know it's a big statement. I know y'all gonna try and come for my life. All right. I know y'all gonna try and come for my life. But if you're not impacting the customer experience and you're not impacting the employee experience, you, my friend, are doing workforce management wrong. I said what I said. I said what I said. Okay. All right. Let's hop into, y'all know I'm extra. Okay. Let's hop into this round table. Okay. All right. So Jessica says truth. All right. Thanks, Jessica. Because, y'all quiet. You in church and they be stepping on your toes if you go to church, right? And they step on your toes. Don't nobody say nothing. They don't give you no hallelujahs, no nothing, right? I'm joking. Anyway. All right. I'm going to be bringing up some guests here in a second. Let me grab the link because I think these guests are going to have some great insights around again, like I just said, workforce management and how you can impact the customer experience, how you can impact the employee experience. And I really want to hop into this topic. Chris, for that, I said amen more than once. If you are attending live, because I know we're live on YouTube as well. If you're attending live in the Zoom room, okay, if you are in the Zoom room, and you have a question and you want to come up and ask, don't hesitate to type it in the chat while I get the link ready for my folks that are going to be coming up here shortly. All right. I'm super excited. All right, so this is the link. I'm going to type it in the chat here. As a matter of fact, what we'll do is we will just go to this screen here and we're going to go here because this is what I want to do. I should have actually had this link already ready. So the first person that I'm going to bring up that I want to ask a couple questions to is Colin. So Colin Crowley, thank you so much for being our guest with us on today. I want to know from you, okay? And I'm going to be sending you a link here in a second. So let me know when you get it. I want to know, Colin. So first of all, before we hop into the questions, Colin is all things CX. So he is, really customer experience and, building out that brand and really has a lot of experience in customer experience. And so Colin and I was recently talking on a show that I have called WFM Tipsy Thursdays. And the show of WFM Tipsy Thursdays is really all about making sure that workforce management leaders are highlighted in the space, but also that we are talking about how we bridge that gap between workforce management and operations and workforce management and IT and workforce management and all the various stakeholders so that people can, most people don't wake up and be like, I want to be a workforce management leader today. But they say, I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a this. So why aren't people saying they want to be WFM leaders? And it's because you can't be what you can't see. And so part of workforce management, the Tipsy Thursday series, is about really visualizing what that looks like in people from all different walks and backgrounds of life and what their experiences are. So again, I was super excited when I got a chance to connect with Colin, and I got Chris on the brain, so I already know who the next interview person is going to be. All right. And we got to talking. So I'm going to hop in. Colin, tell the people, okay, that are not familiar with you a little bit more about yourself, and why are you so passionate about customer experience? Yeah, that's so good. Oh my gosh, that's so good. Listen, do me a favor really quick before we go on, Colin. I just sent you a link. Click on that link in the Zoom chat, because the YouTube audience is like, "Hey, we can't see Colin." So click on that, and you're going to have to leave the Zoom room so that we can be joined here. But click on that link as we continue this conversation. I'm super excited about this. Ooh, this is going to be good. All right, I see you coming in. All right, that way the Zoom the that way the all right, this is Christopher. Oh, okay, this is Christopher. Okay, so let me go back here. All right, so when you join, let me know, Colin, that you've joined the link that I just sent you in the Zoom chat. You clicked on it. Okay, did you see it ask you to join? Okay, I see you. All right, so Colin, you are now. All right, Colin, can you hear me?
Yes,
All
I can hear you
right,
just fine.
Perfect, 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 perfect. Okay, all right. So now our Zoom room and our YouTube. You're about to get me in trouble with YouTube. Okay, all right. So with that experience, and while you're super excited about the how we connect, right, from workforce management and all of your experience in operations, what would you say one of the big mistakes, or even not mistakes, but one of the critical things that when you're looking for, especially with all of your operation experience, like what would be one of the things that you are looking for workforce management leaders to bring in to build a culture around operations and culture and those types of things, and not just be tactical? What are some of those traits that you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I would say one of the things that matters a lot to me because I've led a lot of customer support teams where the definition of how agents should be used was pretty expansive. And I think you see that happening in a lot of different companies where people are rethinking how do you use customer support to go above and beyond putting band-aids on temporary problems and being reactive to solving those momentary problems. So how do you use customer support to create more value for customers? And I think more companies are also appreciating how can you use customer support for operational purposes outside of immediate support needs. So there's a tremendous benefit in getting customer support people involved in helping with operational tasks and other departments outside of support because it gives them a greater knowledge of what's going on in the company and a greater awareness of being part of something as opposed to being siloed. And at the same time, it can be a much more cost-effective way to manage certain operational tasks rather than have to hire other people into operational teams or outsource, whatever the case may be. So anyway, all that together means that the tasks in which everyday agents are involved are becoming more complex because they may not just be the reactive response to incoming customer questions, but you may now be involved in different areas that have very different contact patterns, like maybe social media. So you have more customer support teams being involved in social media,
Yep.
or you have more customer support teams involved in pre-sales inquiries with like proactive chat capabilities, as an example. Or again, like I mentioned, you have more customer support people involved in helping with operations. And also because of the ability to parse out customer needs better, you have more specialization in contact centers as well, where there's more you can do to take an incoming contact from a customer and say, well, this person's calling or emailing or texting about this type of issue, and we have a group of people who are specialists in that area who can do more to assist that customer faster. But the trickiness with that is having a partner in the workforce management space that's able to first understand all those different complexities, and second, understand how they can work together in an intelligent way. Because you also want to be mindful of burnout, and you want to be mindful of the inefficiencies you get from context switching. And there are just so many
Yes.
different things that kind of come into consideration. And a lot of the workforce management methodology you see is still very much focused on, people are sitting there and their customer facing time is in the traditional contact channels. So one big thing is a workforce management model that is able to look expansively at how support's used and how to find intelligent ways of tracking how that extra time is utilized, and how do you encompass that in something that, to your point, makes sense scheduling wise for agents, where you're not pulling people into multiple different directions, and at the same time you're increasing their opportunities to do different things with their careers at a company.
Nuggets, nuggets, nuggets. Like, it was two things that you said that I absolutely loved was the partner, right? Like understanding how to partner with operations in a way that is not just the tactical part of what you're going to be doing, but understanding contact switching, understanding all of these different nuances and elements of what we're doing, right? We're not just doing the thing, right? We are trying to support the business and their goals and how they're serving customers. And so if we're not dialed into that, how do we get that? Right? How do we get this done? And so partnering with leadership in a way that allows us to understand all of those nuances and be dynamic. We have to be dynamic WFM leaders. I think it's important. We have to be able to, which requires a level of agility. It requires a level of comfortability with ambiguity, right? So these are things that we have to be comfortable with. And if we're not comfortable with, we have to begin to become comfortable with it. Many times, workforce management people, we're very data driven. We're very like, hey, the data say X, Y, and Z, and I can't move outside of this box. I can't color outside the lines. But you have to be able to color outside of the lines as a WFM leader if you want to be a dynamic leader, right? If you want to be able to make impact, you have to be able to say, okay, we can get coaching done, or we can do phone and outbound, but this is how we're going to. So you got to think outside of the box, not how you've always done it. So I absolutely love that perspective. What is one of the things that in your experience, I know you have been in various operation roles in various organizations. I'm sorry, various organizations where workforce management has been a thing where it's been building it, whether it was with a solution or without a solution. What has been one of the biggest things or ahas that you were like, oh, with a solution, we're able to do this. Without a solution, we're doing this. And what has been one of those biggest things as you transition from no solution to solution, or just working without a solution altogether? What has been one of those biggest learning lessons?
Yeah, that's interesting. I would say probably one of the things that really sticks out to me is I mentioned, I guess, different models of workforce management that you may use at a company. So if it's the early stage startup or SMB into the mid market world, then you may well have your own internal model that you as the customer support leader have developed because of your knowledge of incoming customer contacts and so forth. And you wear multiple hats during that particular phase and that sort of thing. And then you may go into a phase where there's another internal team that's either owning that or assisting you substantially. So it could be its own WFM team, or maybe you have an internal data team, period, that is heavily involved in workforce management. And then you may have such complex needs that ultimately you end up using a third-party software to manage workforce management instead. And one of the challenges that I've found that's really kind of I felt was interesting and kind of speaks to some of the things you were talking about, right, just then, Juanita, about like flexibility is the trickiest stage. I've actually found is that middle stage.
Mm,
Whereas early on, one of the benefits you have if you're a contact center leader and you're building your own models, and typically again at that stage of a company, you're very involved in what's going on the front line. So you have much more awareness of the everyday life of your agents than would be the case if you were at Cablevision or something. But you have a lot of knowledge that you can use to develop models that by their nature are going to be more basic because you're limited in your capacities and you're
right.
limited in resources. But that is not necessarily a bad thing because it also means you learn not to take your models too seriously. And that you're more conditioned to understand you have to change and you have to morph, and you typically have an easier ability to do that because you have both that insight into strategy, but also the on the ground connection. And then at the other end of the spectrum, when you're a larger company, let's say you're actually using a third-party workforce management tool, those increasingly have so many different data points and inputs, especially with the rise of AI technology, that provides a lot of levers for flexibility than would typically be the case when you were thinking of solutions even like 5 to 10 years ago. So it's may be a more expensive solution, but it can work very well for a more complex organization where you have many different types of customers contacting you and many different channels and many different reasons and specializations you may need. But the middle ground is actually trickier because you get to a spot where your model, you invest in it more seriously, you take it very seriously, but the model can become a bit of a prison, like you were talking about. Where you invest more complexity in it, but the more complexity you have, if it's not backed up with vibrant software, that complexity can manifest itself in a form of jadedness,
Mm,
essentially, because you have less flexibility to change any aspect of the model because you feel that's going to throw everything off, and you have less appetite for being adaptive or for accepting certain unknowns and going with certain unknowns. So you end up getting kind of like the worst of both worlds, I've discovered, where you don't have the exact insight that you're getting from a more high-powered platform, but you lose the flexibility you need.
right.
And that's kind of one of the hardest phases. And that's also hard because that's the phase at a company where a lot of companies are trying to figure out, and they're starting to get more pressure as customer support leaders about, how do I scale my organization effectively? And that's just when you need a vibrant WFM solution that is really working with you and being agile and taking the key data points into consideration. So that's been kind of interesting as I've seen that progression at different companies, that one of the
Mm-hmm.
most dangerous periods where you could mess that up in workforce management is that middle phase.
Yeah.
After you've gotten through your little startup experience early on and before you're getting to much more complex operations, that middle phase can really mess you up and imprison you and make you much less effective at scaling because you've imprisoned yourself in a model.
Yeah, I love that. That's a nugget. I hope you all caught that. That's definitely a good nugget. My last question before I hop over to Christopher. Last question I have from a CX perspective. So I chose you and Christopher very strategically when I was asking about being a special guest. And I asked you, Colin, because of your background in customer experience. And one of the common things that I see is that people are often, especially as WFM leaders, we can be very heads down focused on WFM, the discipline and the tactical things, but we don't take the time to look up, turn our necks, observe what's happening from a customer experience and an employee experience perspective. So as a, VP in the customer experience, so executive level in the customer experience space, what is that number one thing that typically kept you or keeps you up at night when you're thinking about customer experience and delivering a exceptional customer experience? What's that thing?
I think it comes down to data, not surprisingly, because a lot of things come down to data in some capacity. But I think data specifically when it comes to understanding what customers need at different parts of their journey.
Mm,
And understanding that in a contact center, you are dealing with customers at very different parts of their experience, especially now where, again, you may have your customer support team involved in pre-sales inquiries. So you may be engaging people before they're customers and be part of that early branding experience. But those customers have very, very different needs at different parts of that
at the
journey.
journey, yeah.
Yeah, having that holistic view of these are all the areas where we're kind of coming in to make a difference, and how customers have different needs across those parts, and how that needs to be factored in to workforce management. Because you may have a standard model, for instance, for how long the average call should be, but that may be very different based on where the customer is in their journey.
In their journey.
So what that call looks like early after they just ordered may be very different from what it looks like after they receive their product, which may be very different from what it looks like later in the process, or whatever the case may be. But that's where, if you kind of sketch out what are all those different touch points where you're engaging with customers, and how does that manifest in customers contacting you, and where maybe there are even opportunities where you can engage customers more where you're not, and then understanding what are the different needs of customers across those. And that really comes down to having the data to understand what different patterns are you seeing when a customer is contacting you at phase A versus phase B, and what does the talk time or handle time look like between those different phases, and what are the issues customers are talking about on those different phases, or what channels they're using, because they'd be more or less likely to use different contact channels across those phases. And even qualitative data, surveying customers in terms of what they're looking for across those phases. So that's the thing. That's the main thing, is really understanding customers across all those different phases and understanding how that impacts workforce management.
I think something very key, and I hope the audience got this. Chris did not say across the different channels. Well, he is concerned about the channels, but it was across the journey, right? Understanding that customer journey. Colin, I'm sorry, called you Chris. I'm still thinking about Chris. Colin, right? Colin mentioned one of the things that mattered to him most, or kept him up most, was being able to have insight into the data across the journey, because customers are going to need different things based on where they are in the journey. So whether they are in pre-sales, whether they are actually now a customer, or whether they are, moving on to another provider, what are their needs at that different part of the journey is going to be super important, having data and insights into that. So if I'm a WFM person and I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, okay, how do I know that? How do I get that data? How do I have access to that data, so that if I'm talking to my VP of customer support, right, I'm talking to my director and I'm trying to help them, I'm trying to influence a decision, right? Because that's the whole point of data, right? The whole point of data is to be able to tell a story that influences a decision. It's time out for all this data just to have data. Oh, you get data, you get data. We're not Oprah, okay? Everybody don't get data just because they get data. The whole point of the data is to give it revelation and give us insights so that we can make an information decision, information-based decision, informed decision. That's when data turns from data to information. And so I love Colin, that insight around making sure that we have data that understands the journey, because as we understand that, whether we're operations or whether we're WFM leaders, we understand, okay, how do we make impact in operations? Because that's something that as a leader you are concerned about, and being able to help you best serve the customer is what's going to keep the demand of the customer coming back to us, which means as workforce management leaders, we're going to keep a job. Okay. All right. So anyway, that's my soapbox. Thank you so much, Colin, for taking the time to come just share your wisdom and your nuggets. Is there anything you want to leave us with before I send you to the green room?
No, really, I just think, again, I loved your presentation before and all the key pillars that you mentioned in workforce management. I think that all that stuff is really right on, and just great content.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So do me a favor, hang out with me in the green room, and I'm going to be right over with you once we wrap up. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, so now we're going to hop over to Christopher. Okay, Christopher is a global workforce management director at a BPO, and so I want to get his insights. Okay, I want to get his insights on workforce management things and things that he's been able to see and make impact on. And so I'm going to bring up Christopher. Now I've been calling Christopher the whole time. Now it's your turn to be called Colin. Now,
I love the
judge
name
it to my
Colin.
heart and
I'll
not
take
my
it
head.
on.
I mean, judge it to my head and not my heart. Okay.
I think Colin's a wonderful name. You could call me Colin all day long. I'm good with that.
So before we hop in, Chris, but tell the people, first of all, when you first discovered workforce management, why did you fall in love with it? And how have you been able to accelerate your career in workforce management? Not only your career though, but your impact, your influence in workforce management. Why do people listen to you? Why are you the global director of workforce management?
Sure. So, my journey started a long time ago, as evidenced by this, facial hair, you can tell. I used to be on the front lines of call centers. Back then, we called them call centers because it was all voice. And so I started there as customer service, tech support for a major company. And I worked myself into WFM almost as a way to honestly escape the phone.
Yep.
Right? I wanted I
Yep.
wanted to, I wanted to get away from the phone. I was very good at it, but it was very taxing, and it's helped to shape my thinking as a workforce management director now. Of why did when you ask that, why did I leave? That's the key for me for how I've come to shape my philosophy around it. And I guess people listen. One of my VP likes to tell me that I'm a great storyteller,
Mm.
and that I'm able to equate um, our work life to our personal life in a way that makes people go, "Oh, I get it. Makes sense to me. That's I should listen to you a little more. Maybe not be so standoffish, right?" Where when you have that barrier between departments, and when you can touch someone on a personal level, and still make your point, that's everything in the world of business and honestly in life.
Yes, I 1000% agree with that. So tell me, Christopher, like what has been that when we're talking about accelerating your WFM impact, what has been one of those things that if you can just think to a moment that was like an aha, or a moment that was like, okay, this was something that I did to accelerate my WFM impact. Maybe you discovered something or something of that nature. What would be one of those things that you would be like, oh yeah, this was a very pivotal point in not only my career, but the impact that I was able to make? What could you share one of those nuggets with us?
Absolutely. My first position in WFM, I was actually just a scheduler. Just a scheduler.
Hmm.
We call them RTAs now, and to your point, they are the foundation of everything we do. Um, but in that day, and as it is now, honestly, in so many places, they're just that person. and their role isn't really defined very well, or explained or understood or frankly appreciated.
Right.
And when I was in that role in the front line, taking call outs from employees and trying to figure out how to make schedules work in real time, and how the call or contact data would come in, what those patterns looked like, and my brain would recall previous days and previous months and previous years and how things looked. And I started to, about 6 months in, I had just begun to stop with just the task management that I was given,
Ah. Uh-huh.
and I started deep diving. Why are these
Mm.
things happening in
Mm.
our contact center? Not just they're going to happen. It's Thursday at noon. We know it's going to happen. But why is it happening on Thursday at noon every week? And why does it happen every July? Right? That was the key for me. That was the aha moment that said, wow, I can look at this data and these numbers actually tell me a story. And then I started to relate those data, that those numbers, to other days, to other situations, and I began to expand my knowledge about data and data processing and reading. And that's been a big difference for me. That has really driven me towards where I am now, because understanding the why is key.
Yeah, I love that. I
Awesome
love
stuff.
that. And I think that that goes so hand in hand with what we actually have been talking about today, as far as digging into and aligning with the business goals, aligning with the business processes, aligning with the marketing and sales, aligning with operations, aligning with the financials, understanding the business. When we understand the business, then we are able to then dig into the why. Many times we don't understand the business, so we can't even dig into the why. You're like digging into the why, but you don't have any understanding of the why. And so I think that's super critical. I absolutely love that that nugget there. And so one of the things that I'm hearing you say is, if you want to make significant impact, right? If you want to make significant impact, is dig into that why. All right. I think we lost Chris, but I love that nugget all in of itself. Is, if you're going to make significant impact inside of workforce management, you're going to have to dig into the why. You can't just say, okay, this is my job, and that's it. Right. I'm talking to those that actually want to go to the next level in their career. I'm talking to those that are actually wanting to serve and make an impact. If you're just doing the thing, okay, cool. This ain't for you. Okay. This ain't for you. But if you're wanting to make impact, and you actually want to impact customer experience, you want to impact employee experience, you're going to have to dig into the why. And so I'm super excited about that. Listen, we have a couple more minutes before we wrap up for today. I want to know if there are any questions. Again, I know we have our YouTube audience, and we have those of you that are actually here registered in the Zoom room. If you have questions, if you have something that you want to share, again, I told you this, I didn't want this to just be lecture only. If you have something that you want to share, I want to be able to hear from you. Okay. And it looks like we got Chris back here, so I'm going to bring Chris back up to see if he has any other thought. Hey, Chris, I was just going, and I was talking about the nugget that you gave around digging into that why is so good, right? Digging into that why helps us to be able to really align what we're doing tactically, more
Yes.
strategically, to the business goals and objectives. So if you were to
Correct.
leave us with one thing that, outside of, one of the nuggets that you already gave us, which was so amazing, if you were to leave us with something, a piece of advice for those that are in their WFM career and they're wanting to go to that next level, they want to make significant impact, and they're just kind of having a hard time bridging that gap between themselves and operations, or building a brand for themselves around being impactful. What will one of those pieces of advice be?
Yeah, there's so much that you could throw into this, but for me, ultimately, passion. To be passionate about what you're doing is the key to anything that you want to do, but especially in workforce. You have to have a passion for making everyone happy, even though you know you can't. Your goal is ultimately to balance that business against the customer, against the employee. And so you have a three-legged stool that you're trying to manage from inside of your little department. And the passion is what keeps you going every day when you encounter roadblocks and hurdles and issues that are causing problems. It's the passion for it that keeps you going. And so if you don't have that passion, maybe it's not right for you. But if
Mm.
you have the passion about it and you feel like I really just love this and I want to do this, then the best thing you can do with that passion is turn it into knowledge and teach and learn and ask questions and watch and evaluate. And ultimately, as you do that, you're going to grow exponentially as a leader. And then the last thing, along with passion, is compassion.
Mm. Oh,
You've
that's
got to
good.
have it. You've got to have compassion within your passion. And so I like to tell my employees, I literally tell my employees I love them. That may not always be the people culture HR thing to say, but my teams will tell you that they know I love them. And I tell other leaders that I love their employees. I know some of their employees, and I love the employees because they're employing me. And
That's so, we don't think about, and I think that that's so underrated. So
yeah,
underrated. We don't think about,
that's
like, if they're not there, who's serving the customer? And if the customer is not getting served, we don't have nobody to manage, right? We don't have
sure.
no customer to serve. We don't have that. And so I think, I'm sorry, I don't want to steal your thunder. Go ahead, finish what
No,
you're
that's all
saying,
right.
Chris,
You
because
got it.
I'll go in. I'll go in. I'm passionate about this topic.
Juanita, if you haven't figured out by now, you know that I love to hear you talk. Your passion and your knowledge is unmatched, and I hope one day to catch you. But so I'm going to defer to you. I will say passion, compassion, keep your knowledge, never stop learning, never stop teaching, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Chris. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to come hang out with us today. You could have been anywhere. You and Colin could have been anywhere. All of the guests, right, that came to participate today could have been anywhere. Hang out with me in the green room. I'm going to wrap up the webinar here, and then I'll be over with you and Colin shortly. But hang out with me in the green room, okay? That was so epic. I never know if I sometimes I just want to get on here and just talk to y'all, right? Like, but the workforce management person in me won't allow me in a webinar to just not have a deck and not have things to talk about. But sometimes I just really want to get on here and be like, let's just talk. Let's talk about the things workforce management related. Let's talk about all the things that you're experiencing inside of your day to day, and how can we brainstorm and make it better. Maybe we'll do if y'all want a brainstorm session where we just kind of like get in the Zoom room and do some brainstorming. Put it in the chat. Let me know that, hey, yeah, that's something I want, or type it if you're on YouTube and you're listening to us. Type it in the chat. Like, yep, I would love a brainstorm session where we just hop on a bridge and just brainstorm. A lot of times I don't have, a lot of one-on-one time, but I love hopping in group sessions like this and being able to serve where I can. So listen, we are going to wrap up I see you, Jessica. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So our next webinar, actually, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Jessica, because our next webinar next month is going to be on forecasting. So we're doing a targeted one because in our last session, someone said, "Hey, we want a webinar on forecasting." So guess what we're doing? Our next one is going to be on. Our next one is going to be on forecasting. So if you go to the website now and register, because we cap these to keep them small, because we can't we can't manage 1,000 people, right? And so if you go to the website and you look for the one in August, the whole point of that one is going to be about forecasting. Okay, so we're going to be doing a very targeted webinar on forecasting. Okay, so I want to make sure that you all get that and you register for that. Need one for gig and contractor work. Yes. I've been talking about gig scheduling for the longest, Josh, and I've been talking about that for at least 10 years. Okay. I've been talking about that for at least 10 years about gig scheduling. And when I first started talking about it, people were like, Juanita, you're crazy. Ain't no way in the world. I'm telling you, it's not only upon us, it's already here. Okay. It's already here. And we need to start thinking about how do we do gig scheduling, and how do we make sure that we're getting that done. So I want to make sure that you know about the webinar that's in August. The one that's in August is going to be specifically about forecasting, okay, where we're going to be hopping in a session and doing some dummy forecasting, with some dummy data so that you can improve your forecasting, and some common ahas. Okay. Some common ahas when it comes to forecasting. Okay. So that's going to be really good. So make sure that you be a friend and tell a friend, okay, about the August webinar. Okay. Well, thank y'all so much. There will be, okay, there is, as you can see on the screen here, there is let me pause this audio. There is a screen up on your screen right now. All right. Slide on your screen that has a webinar survey, right? So that you can take the survey from today's webinar. So if you're in Zoom or if you are on YouTube watching, do me a favor, scan the QR code, take the survey, right? It's literally we're not pitching you anything. It is just, I want to understand what you want to hear about next and all the different things, what you got from this particular webinar. Okay. And then we actually do have a program. It's called WFM Accelerator. Okay. Our WFM Accelerator program is building workforce management departments inside of organizations. If you are interested in learning more about that, you can scan the QR code where we really actually help organizations build out their workforce management teams. Okay. All right. So until next time, you all already know what to do. Go be great and let's make impact. Until next time, guys. Y'all will be great. See y'all soon. Bye.